So welcome back, Mavericks, to this next episode. We will start this episode to understand the reason why Kosi is considered as the sorrow of the Bihar. So we will start this episode with this video. So we saw in the video the flooding in the Bihar due to the Kosi River. हम कोशी रिवर से इसलिए शुरू कर रहे हैं बिकॉज द कोशी रिवर लाइज इन दी तेराई रीजन, और आज हम डिस्कस करेंगे नॉर्दर्न प्लेन का सेकंड डिवीज़न जो है तेराई रीजन. जो सबसे बड़ी प्रॉब्लम है बिहार में वो है फ्लडिंग ड्यू टू द रिवर ऑफ कोशी. द कोशी रिवर प्राइमली flows through the eastern Terai region of Nepal. हमने देखा वीडियो में वो कैसे सोशली और इकोनॉमिकली इम्पैक्ट कर रही है. सो व्हाट डू यू थिंक, व्हाट वुड बी द रीजन बिहाइंड द फ्लडिंग ऑफ कोशी इन द बिहार? द फर्स्ट वन, high sediment load from the Himalayas. The Kosi River carries massive amount of silt and debris, causing frequent riverbed rise and reducing water carrying capacity. हमें पता है जो हमारा तराई रीजन है that lies in the foothills of the mountains, Shivalik mountains. Yesterday we discussed about the Bawar region. And after the Bawar region, Koshi region comes. So the first point is high sediment load from the Himalayas. वो कैसे आता है? Through rivers. Okay. The second point would be unstable and meandering nature. We already know. We discussed in the previous episode about the meandering of river. This river is known for its shifting course, sometimes changing paths by several kilometers, leading to the unpredictable floods. जो रिवर है कोशी वो हाइट सेडिमेंट्स लेके आती है ऊपर से. उसके क्या हो रहा है, ये अपना पाथ बार बार चेंज कर रही है बाय सेवरल किलोमीटर्स. That is unpredictable. That is the second reason behind the flooding. And the third reason would be embankment failures. Man-made embankment built to control flooding often collapse under pressure, making flood more destructive. जो हमने एक टाइप के बैरियर बनाए होते हैं मैन मेड, वो. द फोर्थ पॉइंट वुड बी, जैसा कि ऋतिक ने बोला, Heavy rainfall. We know the region in Bihar comes under the monsoon effect, southwest monsoon. So excessive rainfall in Nepal and North Bihar result in the sudden and massive water inflows, overwhelming the river banks. So first point है high sediment load, second है unstable and meandering nature of river, third है embankment failures, fourth है heavy monsoon rains, fifth है glacial melt and landslide. Due to the climate change, what is happening? It is causing Himalayan glacial melt, adding to the river's flow, while landslide increase sedimentation. ज़्यादा पानी मेल्ट हो रहा है, उसके कारण क्या हो रहा है? हाई सेडिमेंटेशन हो रही है, और हाई सेडिमेंटेशन से क्या हो रहा है? हाई सेडिमेंट लोग लेके आ रही है रिवर नीचे को, उससे क्या हो रहा है? जो रिवर का जो नेचर है वो अनस्टेबल हो रहा है, वो मेंटरिंग कर रही है बार बार. ओके, एंड द लास्ट पॉइंट वुड बी low gradient of the river in Bihar. As the river enters the plains, its speed decreases, leading to the sediment deposition, which raises the river bed and increases the flood risk. So these are the 6 prominent reasons behind the Kosi flooding. So the next question would be, what is the solution to the Bihar flood problem? I will show you 6 to 7 videos. You have to observe. You have to form conjecture based upon the observation. And after watching those 6 to 7 videos, you have to tell me what we have to do as a solution to this problem. Okay? Let's watch it.
This isn't a forest. Not really. It's actually an urban park in the densely populated city of Nanchang, China, filled with birds, native trees, and volcanic rock on 137 acres of urban land. It's called a sponge city, and it's a type of natural infrastructure that architects are.
Although we have already discussed about the sponge city in the previous episode, but it is just a reminder.
Around the world are designing to help us combat and withstand a changing climate. So what does it mean for a city to become spongy? This video is presented by Delta Airlines. Today, like everywhere else on the globe, cities are feeling the effects of climate change, and they often don't have the right infrastructure to help them survive its impacts. Some neighborhoods in Houston don't have enough trees to provide shade and relief from rising temperatures. Meanwhile, rising sea levels threaten coastal cities like Mumbai and Seoul that don't often have the infrastructure to handle more frequent flooding. This is only made worse by the fact that cities are covered with pavement and other surfaces that can't absorb water.
Urbanization changes habitats. So when you build on a place, it removes vegetation, it alters hydrology.
That's Dr. Charlie Nylon. He told me that cities play a complicated role in the climate crisis, especially when it comes to maintaining biodiversity.
Biodiversity is, simply put, the total number of plants and animals that occur someplace.
Biodiversity is one of our main support systems for human life on Earth. We rely on natural ecosystems full of diverse plants, animals, and organisms for essential things like clean water, food, and medicine. And biodiversity is critical to defending the Earth against climate change. We need healthy forests to absorb carbon dioxide from the air and enough native plants for pollinators to help crops flourish. But studies show that as urban expansion continues, it can drive habitat losses that directly put some species in danger, profoundly impacting global biodiversity.
Cities have a big impact on what happens locally. Cities capture a significant number of plant and animal species which are native. so that even in cities, there's a significant amount of biodiversity.
Which means they can play a role in saving these local plant and animal species.
The really important thing to think about is not so much how urbanization reduces biodiversity, but really how in cities you can conserve biodiversity.
One way to do this is by creating environments where nature can flourish. Environments that can also help cities soak up excess water. And that's where sponge cities come in. In 2015, China launched a Sponge City pilot program in 30 cities across the country. The goal of the program was to coordinate and promote the construction of sponge cities, which would improve urban drainage and flood prevention and create a diverse biological environment. Architects did this by supplementing the existing gray infrastructure that relied on concrete pipes and dams with natural solutions, like gardens that are designed to capture rain and native trees that suck up excess water through their roots. In China, these ideas were taken from ancient drainage systems. That's because for centuries, Chinese cities actually handled water pretty well, in part because they were built with nature in mind. A study from the scientific journal Water recreated some of these old practices. Building roofs designed with sloped eaves allowed rainwater to fall onto the permeable pavement below, and exterior walls were lined with flowers and trees to absorb rain and stormwater. Today, natural solutions like these have been re-implemented in major cities across China. In Xianan, a sewage pipe was replaced with this natural infiltration system that uses vegetation beds to purify storm and rainwater. Shanghai replaced concrete roads and sidewalks with this permeable pavement, which is lined with vegetation to absorb excess water into the soil underground. And across Wuhan, dozens of urban gardens like these were planted to absorb water before it overwhelms communities. Most of these projects rely on introducing vegetation in an urban area to soak up excess water. This is a really great way to handle flooding, and it also supports urban biodiversity.
Because you're providing habitat for additional groups, plant and animal species, sometimes you can restore habitats that have been lost.
Despite these benefits, sponge cities can't fix everything. The connection between climate change and flooding is still being studied. But when floods do happen, these spongy cities are only able to absorb excess water up to a certain point. In 2021, sponge city designs in Zhengzhou failed when historic rainfall drenched the city. More than 300 people died from the catastrophic flooding. There are other limitations too. One review of sponge cities in Gui'an New District found that national standards and codes for spongy infrastructure are really difficult to enforce because climate, hydrology, and even socioeconomics are vastly different from one city to the next. So what might work in some cities won't necessarily solve climate-related problems in others. Plus, ambitious sponge city designs like the sprawling parks built in China are expensive and require a lot of space, which most cities don't have. So some US cities experimenting with natural infrastructure, like LA and Boston, are using the green space they already have by trying things like planting vegetation on curbs and creating green spaces along median strips. One type of city design certainly won't save us from climate change, but they can make a difference in how we live with it.
We often talk about biodiversity like it's far away, but it's actually right there. And I think the more that people understand that the kinds of things they do from where they live, that really matters. People can do things to change cities. They can do things to make cities different. They can do things to make cities better.
Now we will see second.
Should a flood hit, Japan is ready, and their solution is the largest underground water facility in the world. About an hour outside of Tokyo is the Metropolitan Area Outer Underground Discharge Channel. This tunnel sits 160 feet underground and is around 4 miles in length. Inside is a network of large vertical shafts that store floodwaters. The giant tunnels were built because this area of Japan was constantly flooding. Now, instead of inundating nearby towns, the water flows underground and is diverted to a river that can handle the influx of water making sure more than 9 million residents stay dry.
This is the third video.
Missouri, a city that floods repeatedly. We're talking catastrophic floods twice in less than 2 years.
Yet more rain and dangerous flooding are affecting millions in parts of the Midwest and South tonight.
Taking across the Merrimack River, notorious for flooding very quickly.
Towns like Eureka and others, well, they're in for a rough few days.
But just 12 miles downstream is a town called Valley Park. It stayed pretty dry thanks to a levee, a giant artificial embankment that surrounds the city, designed to keep.
Note down this term. Levee. How levee are protecting from flood for some area and worsen the other area.
Water out. Valley Park got their levee largely because the city was willing and able to pay for it. It kept their own town dry, but here's what flooding looked like in neighboring towns, including Eureka, that didn't have levees.
The Valley Park levee withstood the water.
That levee holding could be part of the problem.
He suspected the same levee that protected Valley Park may have been to blame for devastating flooding in Fenton, Eureka, and Arnold.
Can a levee protect one town while making flooding worse for others, especially towns that can't afford a levee? A fluid mechanics lab, a 13-foot-long model of a river, and some adorable tiny houses will help us find out. People love levees. There's about 100,000 miles of these embankments across the U.S., sometimes concrete, sometimes earthen. For centuries, we've built them between humans and rivers.
Levee workers transport material by hand, by truck, by boat.
We even write songs about them.
Drove my Chevy to the levee, but the levee was dry.
If it keeps on raining, levee's going to break.
When the levee breaks, have no place to stay.
But it turns out, even when levees are effective, they can still be devastating. As far back as 1852, levees came with a very important warning. Charles Ellet Jr., a famed U.S. civil engineer, cautioned that levees confine rivers and cause them to rise higher and flow faster. And relying on levees encourages a false security. But he was largely ignored. Levees became the default for flood control, mostly funded and constructed by local entities. Some riverside communities that could afford it built taller levees for more protection, while less fortunate neighbors dealt with the devastating effects. To show you what we mean, we went to the banks of the Mississippi River, to a fluid mechanics lab where a team of engineers from the University of Minnesota built us this landscape model to test flood scenarios. Overhead, a scanner collects 3D data to measure exactly what's happening. It's a generic model of a river with no levees. That means when the water level increases, it overflows and spreads across the floodplain, often creating important wetland habitat that's home to a variety of species. Putting in levees cuts rivers off from this land, destroying floodplains and wetlands. It allows people to convert these areas into farmland or build houses on them. And while levees protect these communities from flooding, they constrict the river into a narrow channel, making the water flow faster and higher. That creates a bottleneck leading to additional flooding upstream. If all levees are the same height, both sides should be about equally protected from the average flood. And if the river rises so much that the water overtops the levee, then both sides should flood pretty equally. But let's say people on one side of the river lobby for higher levees. Now, instead of both sides flooding, only one floods. The side with the lower levees is at a clear disadvantage. So what can people in flood zones do? We can't just pick up and move major cities. We need levees to protect places like these. There is an alternative. We could build levees farther back so rivers could still expand and create wetlands. These setback levees ease flooding on both sides rather than protecting one city at the expense of another. This approach is common in other parts of the world, like Holland, for example, but not in the US. Here, we tend to build levees right next to rivers. Some communities that can afford to build higher levees do so at the risk of others with little oversight. We do have the Army Corps of Engineers, a federal agency tasked with regulating a fraction of all levees. They have to ensure, at least on paper, that federal levees won't dramatically raise local flood levels. But those engineering predictions don't always match reality. For instance, the Army Corps designed Valley Park's levee in the early 90s with data and software from that era. Engineers estimated the levee's impact on neighboring areas would be minimal, but by the time it was completed in 2005, the region had grown significantly. More people had built alongside the river, increasing the risk of flooding, which
I think now we understand the concept of levee. We will move to next video. Now watch this. And this is the last video. This is happening in our neighboring country, Bangladesh.
যখন ছোট ছিলাম এখানে খেলাধুলা করতাম, ধান ফান হয়তো এখন নদীর সাগরের পানি বাইরে যাইয়া আমাদের এখন ধান ফান হয় না। এখন আমরা 3-4 বছর ধরে এই চাষাবাদ করতে আছি, শাক সবজি এগুলো করি, ধান ফান হয় না।
So we have seen many videos. I think now you are able to answer it. So Ritik, what do you think? What is the best solution for Bihar flood problem?
Well, the best solution for Bihar flood problem, according to me, like underground water tunnels.
Okay.
We can use levees and setback levees.
Okay.
And we can use modern agriculture plan like floating farms.
Like?
Floating farms.
Yes. Or?
We can make flood barrier.
Okay. Or?
Spawn city like China.
Yes. Or?
And we have to think where the like
क्या हम
जहाँ पे जैसे
सॉरी फॉर डिस्ट्रप्शन, क्या हम ये सारे आइडियाज़ एक ही जगह इम्प्लीमेंट कर सकते हैं?
नहीं सर, एक जगह इम्प्लीमेंट नहीं कर सकते।
तो किसके ऊपर डिपेंड करेगा?
तो सर वहाँ का
That will be depend upon the nature of the problem.
Yes sir.
Because every problem have different nature.
Yes sir.
And require different solution. So according to the problem, we can implement these solutions. Okay. So the first point would be floodplain zoning and land use planning. We need to enforce zoning laws to restrict settlement in the high risk floodplains and encourage flood resistant urban planning. हमें वहाँ पे सेटलमेंट रोकनी पड़ेगी जहाँ पे हमें पता है कि ये पर्टिकुलर एरिया फ्लड प्रोन है। हमें वहाँ से सेटलमेंट को ट्रांसफ़र करना पड़ेगा ऐसी जगह पे जहाँ पे फ्लड का खतरा बहुत कम है। ओके। द सेकेंड पॉइंट वुड बी अर्ली वार्निंग सिस्टम. We need to strengthen the real-time monitoring with satellite data. We can use the satellite. We can also use the real-time monitoring, river gauge stations, and mobile alert to warn, communicate in advance. We can communicate advance through the technology like mobile phone. Okay. The next one would be infrastructure development. We need to build and maintain embankments, reservoir, and drainage system to control flood water effectively. हमें बार बार अपडेट करना पड़ेगा अपने इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर को। ऐसा नहीं कि जो हमने 50 साल पहले या 20 साल पहले बना दिया है उसी के साथ कंटिन्यू करना है। नहीं, नई नई टेक्नोलॉजी के साथ, नई नई इनोवेशन के साथ हमें उसे भी इम्प्रूव करना है। द नेक्स्ट पॉइंट वुड बी erosion control measure. We need to implement afforestation, river bank stabilization, and check dam to reduce soil erosion along major rivers. डिफॉरेस्टेशन से क्या हो रहा है? वी नो द soil erosion increased, so we need to do afforestation. Okay, so the next point would be community engagement and awareness. We need to conduct regular disaster preparedness drills and educate locals on evacuation and flood safety measure. We need to educate them. जब तक हम एजुकेट नहीं करेंगे लोगों को, तो बाकी सारे मेजर्स का या कंट्रोल्स का उतना इफेक्ट नहीं होगा. द नेक्स्ट पॉइंट वुड बी रेन वाटर हार्वेस्टिंग and water management. We need to make our cities which can harvest the rainwater, as we saw in the video. Next point would be riverfront development and restoration. We already saw in the video about the riverfront development and restoration. The second one and the next one would be flood resistant agriculture practices, like we saw in the video. Next point would be flood resistant infrastructure. We need to construct elevated houses, roads and flood shelters to minimize damage and displacement. यार एक वीडियो रह गई फ्लड रेजिस्टेंट इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर के लिए. मैं आपको दोबारा से दिखाता हूँ कि हमें अलग से सोचना है, इनोवेटली. That video, I think it's related to Japan. So watch it carefully.
Japanese home builder has developed a house that floats during flooding as a measure to prevent damage. An experiment compared the house with a conventional one. Massive water is poured into a tank containing the two structures based on the scenario that torrential rains have caused nearby rivers to flood. Water enters the conventionally built house, but not the flood-resistant one. A device set up on the base of the house prevents water from seeping in. When the floodwater becomes about 2 meters deep, the house starts to float. It remains in place even amid strong flows of water. That's because the base of the house is attached to the ground with wires. Even when the water level reaches 3 meters, the inside is not affected. The home builder began selling the flood-resistant house in September.
So in India, we also need to think along these lines. How we can make flood resistance houses, like we saw in the video. The next point would be government coordination and funding. We need to strengthen interdepartmental coordination, increase budget allocation for flood management, and ensure timely relief distribution. And next point would be research and innovation. We need to invest in hydrological studies, GIS mapping, and advanced modeling to predict and mitigate floods more effectively. The next point would be international cooperation. We need to collaborate with Nepal's for upstream water management, early warning, and joint flood mitigation project. Okay? So, yesterday, I think now it is clear to you what are the reason behind the Bihar flood and what are the challenges they are facing and what are the strategies we can apply to control the damage, or we can also mitigate, or we can also prevent through various measures we just discussed. In the last episode, we discussed about the Bhavar region. Today, we will discuss about the Terai region. We already know from north to south, these can be divided in three major zones: Bhavar, Terai, and the alluvial plains. So, Terai. What is the meaning of word Terai? The word Terai comes from the Persian language and means wet or moist land. Wet or moist land. We know south of the Babar is the Terai belt with an approximate width of 10 to 12 kilometer, 10 to 20 kilometer, where most of the streams and rivers re-emerged without having a properly demarcated channel, thereby creating marshy and swampy condition known as the Terai. हमने कल देखा था ना, बाबर रीजन में क्या हो जा रही थी, जो मेरी रिवर्स है वो मर्ज हो जा रही थी, सबमर्ज हो जा रही थी बिकॉज ऑफ द कोर्स नेचर ऑफ द सॉइल. वहाँ पे क्ले कंटेंट कम है, तो वाटर रिटेंशन कैपेसिटी उस सॉइल की बहुत कम है, और ऊपर से काफ़ी सारे रॉक्स है, उसके अंदर वो मर्ज हो जा रही थी. और वो जो रिवर मर्ज हो रही थी वो कहाँ जाके निकल रही थी, वो निकल रही है तराई रीजन में. This has a luxurious growth of natural vegetation and houses a varied wildlife. अगर ये यहाँ पे फर्टाइल लैंड है तो ऑब्वियसली बात है यहाँ पे नेचुरल वेजिटेशन की ग्रोथ काफ़ी होगी. The abundance of water and fertile land makes the Terai zone one of the most agriculture productive region of the northern plains. The Terai region, with its swamps and marshy condition, is home to a wide range of flora and fauna, including several endangered species. This region plays a crucial role in biodiversity conservation and hosts numerous national parks. This is the facts about the Terai region. The average elevation is about 750 meter. It extends nearly 800 km from east to west and about 30-40 km from north to south. You can note it down. These are the landscape. West, some of the India West knowing tiger reserves and protected areas such as Korba Tiger Reserve, Rajaji National Park, Dudhwa Tiger Reserve, Balmiki Tiger Reserve. These are the important for prelims. The eastern part of the Terai is also known in the West Mongol state and Bangladesh as the Dwars. We already discussed Dwars. You can take the screenshot of this slide. You have to remember, because this is the facts. We cannot change it. You can also see in which states Terai region hai. The next is one of the most important concept, wetland. हमने देखा जो तराई का मतलब है वो है wetland. So Ritik, what is the meaning of wetland? What is your understanding about wetland?
So wetland means having absorption power to absorb rainwater.
Okay. Any other example?
No, sir.
Okay. So wetland are areas where water is the primary factor controlling the environment and the associated plant and animal life. They occur where the water table is at or near the surface of the land or where the land is covered by water. हमें ऑलरेडी पता है ये रीजन abundance of water है, यहाँ पे बहुत सारा वाटर है because it lies near the river bed. Also यहाँ पे ये रीजन आता है आफ्टर बाबर. Wetland are defined as lands transitional between terrestrial and aquatic ecosystem where the water table is usually at or near the surface of the land is covered by shallow water. So these are the types of wetland: marshes, swamps, bogs, shallow lake and pond, mangroves. We already discussed mangroves, estuaries and coastal wetland. So we will understand what is the meaning of marshes, swamps through this video. Today we will see lots of video.
This video we will learn what is a swamp and what is the difference between a swamp and a marsh. If you look at their locations, both are almost at a similar place, closer to a water body. So both a swamp and a marsh is a wetland. Both of them has similar characteristics in their landform. However, the only difference between a marsh and a swamp is that in a marsh area you will not find trees. You will only find grass and herbaceous plants. Whereas in a swamp you will find trees and other woody plants. Otherwise, both of them are found at a low-lying land, which gets filled with water during rainy season or from rising water levels of a river, lake or stream. In India, if you see, Sundarban is a mangrove area. The moment you think about mangrove, you will find woody trees and plants. That means the Sundarban wetland is a swamp and not a marsh. I have told you that in a swamp, you will find trees and woody plants. Plus, it is next to the Bay of Bengal. That means it is a saltwater swamp. Similarly, if you look at the Harike wetland in Punjab, you will find grass and herbaceous plants. That means it is a marsh. So the only difference between a marsh and a swamp is the existence of trees. If there are trees and woody plants, then it has to be a swamp. Please remember this point.
This is Neela Hauz or Blue Tank. It is a natural depression next to Sanjay Van in South Delhi, India. The tank, once a major source of fresh water in South Delhi and later a dumping ground due to rapid urbanization, is presently a constructed wetland. The wetland treats sewage water through bioremediation and lets it flow into the lake. It is not only efficient and reliable when compared to mechanical sewage treatment plants, but it's also economical. It requires zero electricity. Today, the wetland converts 1 million liters of sewage water per day into clean water comparable to tap water having less than BOD 4 milligrams per liter per day. The success story of Neela Hauz has made officials consider similar implementations in other water bodies and develop a network of wetlands ecosystem in the city. Colombo has such a network in place that provides critical life support to the city. This also helps decrease floods. In 2018, Colombo was declared the first capital to be accredited as an international wetland city by Ramsar. Many other cities are coming to realize the significance of wetlands, its intricate connections with the sustainability of the environment and the well-being of the people. Just as forests are called the lungs of the earth, wetlands are the kidneys that regulate water and filter waste from the landscape. Wetlands include mangroves, peatlands and marshes, rivers and lakes, deltas, rice fields, and even coral reefs. Wetlands exist in every country and in every climatic zone. In India, around 4.63% of the geographical area is wetlands. A total of 7,57,060 wetlands have been mapped in the country. But why are wetlands important? Wetland ecosystems support a host of animal and plant life, and they are critically important for the survival of humans too, from the mitigation of climate change to the protection of human settlements from floods. But sadly, 50% of the world's wetlands have been destroyed. Without suitable wetland habitat, many species could soon be homeless. Let us explore the benefits of wetlands in detail. Wetlands are great filters. They trap sediments and remove pollutants, which helps to purify water. This certainly beats expensive human-made filtration systems. Wetlands work like giant sponges. They store water and then slowly release it, and this helps to deal with dry seasons with little rainfall. Wetlands can prevent floods. When rivers burst their banks, wetlands can store the excess water and slow it down so it distributes more evenly over a floodplain. The roots of trees and other vegetation also helps slow the speed of floodwaters. In the past, city planners either filled in wetlands areas or dammed them, adding pipes that would lead the water to the ocean as fast as possible. But now, we know that wetlands allow water to soak into the ground and to replenish the natural groundwater supply. Biodiversity is high around wetlands habitats. These areas provide food and shelter for many animals. The biodiversity of wetlands has produced some incredible specialist species that are only found in these habitats. Wetlands provide good areas for grazing, and the variety of grasses along with the supply of running water can be beneficial to farming livestock. Wetlands provide locations for recreation. Wetlands provide people a place to visit where they can enjoy nature walks, picnics, birding, fishing, or even sailing. As more people flock to cities, these recreational spaces in nature become even more valuable. Urban wetlands are prize land and therefore should be integrated into the development and management plans of cities. The Ramsar Convention Wetland City Accreditation recognizes 18 cities that have taken exceptional steps to safeguard their urban wetlands. These pioneer cities will serve as examples and inspire deliberate actions for other cities towards sustainable urbanization. Currently in India, 47 wetlands with a surface area of over 1 million hectares.
This is the old video. Now India have more than 80 wetland sites.
Are designated as wetlands of international importance under the Ramsar Convention. One of the most important ones in this list is the 55-acre East Kolkata wetlands. It is the world's only fully functional organic sewage management system. These unique wetlands receive the city's sewage, organically treated with the help of sunshine, oxygen, and microbial action, and turn into a productive fish habitat. In short, these wetlands are Kolkata's free sewage remediation works, a fertile aquatic garden, and most importantly, a natural flood defense for the low-lying city. The capital, Delhi, has identified 1,043 water bodies, but none are notified. This, however, could soon change, with the capital expected to notify 10 major lakes and water bodies as wetlands by the end of March. The Delhi State Wetland Authority is expected to release a draft notification for each water body under.
Watch this video. In this video, we will understand about the Ramsar sites.
A Ramsar site is a wetland site designated to be of international importance. These wetlands are protected under strict guidelines of the Ramsar Convention on Wetlands. The Ramsar Convention on Wetlands, also known as the Convention on Wetlands, is an intergovernmental treaty for the conservation and wise use of wetlands. The convention, signed in 1971 by UNESCO in the Iranian city of Ramsar, is one of the oldest intergovernmental accords for preserving the ecological character of wetlands. Over 170 countries are now party to the Ramsar Convention. There are over 2,400 Ramsar sites around the world, covering over 2.5 million square kilometers. Wetlands are among the world's most productive environments. These are areas where water is the primary factor controlling the environment and the associated plant and animal life. Wetlands provide a wide range of important resources and ecosystem services such as food, water, fiber, groundwater recharge, water purification, flood moderation, erosion control, and climate regulation.
Now watch this. India lost one third of its natural wetland in 4 decades, reveals study. This is the news of 2020. And watch also this. This is the news of 2024. Wetland loss sends a warning signal. In Chennai, rapid urban expansion has resulted in 85% decline in the area of wetland, affecting water retention and flood regulation, says World Wildlife Fund. As per the Press Information Bureau of India, as of now, India has 85 Ramsar sites with 1.35 million hectare of dedicated land for sustainable ecosystem. ये चेंज होती रहती है, नई नई साइट्स आती रहती है. अभी 85 है, मे बी अगले मंथ तक 86 हो जाए या 87 हो जाए. तो एक बार प्रीलिम से पहले इसको दोबारा से रिवाइज कर लेना कि कितनी टोटल हमारे पास रामसर साइट्स हैं. और सबसे इम्पोर्टेंट होती है जो रिसेंटली ऐड की होती है, वो इम्पोर्टेंट है, वो आ सकती हैं प्रीलिम्स में. और हमेशा ना ऑथेंटिक सोर्स पे डिपेंडेंट रहना है. ये PIV ऑथेंटिक सोर्स है. लाइक इन 2023 में 2013 में 26 वेटलैंड साइट्स थी रामसर, और 2024 में कितनी थी? 85. Okay, so we understand the significance of wetlands. We also know about the Ramsar sites, Terai region. So note down the question. What are wetlands? Explain their types, ecological and economic significance, and role in biodiversity conservation and climate regulation. Analyze the causes and impact of wetland degradation, including anthropogenic and natural factors, and propose comprehensive measures for their conservation, restoration, and sustainable management in the context of global and national efforts. तो ये आपका होमवर्क है. हमने काफ़ी कुछ डिस्कस किया है वेटलैंड के बारे में, तो ये आपको पता करके आना है. Also note it down. Analyze the ecological and socio-economic significance of Terai region in the context of Indian environmental and development challenges. Examine the impact of climate change on Terai ecosystem, including its biodiversity, water resource, and agriculture. Additionally, suggest measures for conservation and sustainable management of this region, considering both environmental protection and socio-economic development. We already discussed about the major problem in the Terai region, that is flooding. So, major rivers which flows through the Terai regions are Ganga, Yamuna, Ghagra, and Kosi. We already discussed about the Kosi in detail. These all rivers pass through the Terai region, creating a dense network of tributaries and wetlands. We already discussed about the wetlands. तो ऋतिक क्या लगता है, जो मेरा तराई रीजन है वो फर्टाइल है, तो क्या लगता है यहाँ पे एग्रीकल्चर कैसे होता होगा और कौन कौन सी एग्रीकल्चर प्रैक्टिसेस होती होगी यहाँ पे?
सर अभी कोई आइडिया नहीं है इसका.
Okay, no problem. The fertile soil of the Terai region make it an essential agriculture region, which contributing significantly to India's food production. It supports the cultivation of crops like rice, wheat, sugarcane, and various fruits. Terai region also support the human settlements. Terai region is a densely populated and has been a historical important area for human settlement and also for economic activities because of the fertile soil. It plays a crucial role in the livelihood of the local population. हमने इस क्वेश्चन में बोला एनालाइज द इकोलॉजिकल एंड सोशो इकोनॉमिक सिग्निफिकेंस. तो इकोलॉजिकल सिग्निफिकेंस क्या होगा? हमें पता है कि जिस रीजन में वाटर की अबंडेंस होती है वहाँ पे वो रीजन फ्लोरा एंड फोना के लिए काफ़ी सूटेबल होता है. सो हम फर्स्ट पॉइंट लिख सकते हैं इकोलॉजिकल सिग्निफिकेंस में बायोडाइवर्सिटी हॉटस्पॉट. The Terai region is rich in biodiversity, hosting a variety of flora and fauna. It serves as a critical habitat for numerous species, including endangered one. Okay. Second लिख सकते हैं हम ecological significance में water resources. As we already know, this region is abundant in water resources. The third point would be agroecological diversity. The Terai plains are fertile and support diverse agriculture activities. This region is a major contributor to the country food production. And second is socio-economic significance. इसमें फर्स्ट पॉइंट आ जाएगा एग्रीकल्चर, वी ऑलरेडी डिस्कस्ड. सेकंड पॉइंट आ जाएगा ह्यूमन सेटलमेंट, वी ऑलरेडी डिस्कस्ड. थर्ड पॉइंट इज ट्रेड एंड ट्रांसपोर्ट. दिस रीजन एक्ट एज ए transit point for a trade and commerce between India and its neighboring countries. We know it lies below the Bawar region, and Bawar region lies in the foothills of Shivalik. Fourth point would be diversity in culture, because we are celebrating lots of festival because of the agriculture practices we are doing. The fifth point would be ecotourism. तो फर्स्ट पॉइंट था हमारा क्वेश्चन में इकोलॉजिकल सिग्निफिकेंस, सेकंड था सोशो इकोनॉमिक सिग्निफिकेंस ऑफ तराई रीजन, एंड द थर्ड पॉइंट इज इन्वायरमेंटल एंड डेवलपमेंट चैलेंजेस. सो रिधि क्या लगता है कौन से इन्वायरमेंटल एंड डेवलपमेंट चैलेंज हो सकते हैं तराई रीजन में?
सर एनवायरमेंटल एंड डेवलपमेंट चैलेंज में तो एक तो इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर.
ओके, एनवायरमेंट पूछ रहा हूँ मैं, एनवायरमेंट एंड डेवलपमेंट चैलेंजेस.
तराई रीजन में एनवायरमेंट चैलेंज.
अगर मेरी अर्बन ओवर सेटलमेंट होगी उसके कारण मुझे पेड़ काटने पड़ेंगे, उससे क्या होगा? डिफोरेस्टेशन.
डिफोरेस्टेशन, सॉइल इरोजन.
यस, दैट इज द फर्स्ट पॉइंट.
लैंड डिग्रेडेशन.
मुझे वाटर मैनेजमेंट के इशू आएंगे.
यस.
मेरा पोल्यूशन भी इंक्रीज होगा. ओके.
यस सर.
और आगे है एग्जामिन द इम्पैक्ट ऑफ क्लाइमेट चेंज ऑन द तराई इकोसिस्टम इंक्लूडिंग इट्स बायोडाइवर्सिटी, वाटर रिसोर्स एंड एग्रीकल्चर. तो क्लाइमेट चेंज से क्या होगा? मेरा रेनफॉल पैटर्न चेंज होगा, एक्सट्रीम वेदर इवेंट्स, टेम्परेचर राइज. ओके. एंड नेक्स्ट इज we will discuss in detail about rainfall pattern, extreme weather events and temperature rise when we will discuss atmosphere. For as of now you just write it down as a fact. The impact of climate change are changing in rainfall pattern, extreme weather events, temperature rise. So what are the conservation measures? The first point is obviously afforestation. Second is water conservation, climate resistant agriculture. We can take regulatory measures, community involvement, disaster preparedness. These are the things which we can do. अभी आप दोनों का क्या है, जो इससे पिछले वाला क्वेश्चन था वो तो आपका होमवर्क है. ये वाला वेटलैंड वाला, ये तो आपको लिख के मुझे फोटो सेंड करनी है. और इस क्वेश्चन की भी हमने ऑलरेडी ये डिस्कस कर लिया है. इस वीडियो को दोबारा से देखो, इसका आंसर लिखो और मुझे सेंड करो. ओके ऋतिक?
ओके सर.
So this is about today episode. So any question of any kind? कुछ समझ नहीं आया हो या कुछ और प्रॉब्लम आ रही हो?